The ballroom glittered with 1,000 points of light. Crystal chandeliers cast their glow over designer gowns and tailored suits. Champagne flowed freely. Laughter echoed off marble walls. And in the center of it all, I stood trembling, a pen clutched in my frozen fingers. "Sign it, Elizabeth," Ryan's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. "Everyone's waiting." I'll never forget the way my hands shook as I held that pen. The black ink seemed to mock me, ready to seal my fate with a single signature. Ryan stood there beside me, his jaw set with determination, his eyes cold in a way I'd never seen before. Next to him, Victoria pressed against his arm, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she touched his shoulder with possessive familiarity. Both of them watched me like predators who'd cornered their prey. Behind them, his mother Patricia stood with that tight smile she'd perfected over years of dismissing people she considered beneath her. His father Charles waited with barely concealed impatience, checking his Rolex every few seconds. And beyond them, stretching across the grand ballroom of the Mitchell estate, were 150 people. Friends, family, business associates, society elite, all of them staring at me while I prepared to sign away 3 years of marriage. But here's what none of them knew, what none of them could have possibly suspected. 6 hours before that party, I'd received a phone call that changed absolutely everything. The Mitchell estate looked like something from a fairy tale that night. Fresh snow fell in gentle cascades, covering the manicured lawns and pristine hedges. Warm light glowed from every window, beckoning guests inside to celebrate Christmas in style. The circular driveway was packed with luxury vehicles. Mercedes, BMWs, Teslas, even a Bentley or two. I'd parked my 12-year-old Honda Civic down the street, embarrassed as always to let anyone see the rust spots and dented bumper. I walked up that long driveway alone, my breath forming clouds in the December air, my coat too thin for the bitter cold. I'd been married to Ryan Mitchell for 3 years. 3 long years of trying desperately to fit into a world that never wanted me. 3 years of his mother calling me the charity case just loud enough for me to hear. 3 years of believing that if I just worked harder, stayed quieter, loved better, smiled more graciously, maybe they'd finally see me as family instead of an inconvenient mistake. I grew up in a group home in Burlington, Vermont. 17 kids crammed into a converted Victorian house with peeling paint and creaky floors. No parents, no family, no one who wanted me. I was 3 years old when I arrived there, clutching a worn, stuffed rabbit that was the only thing I owned. I grew up believing I was fundamentally unlovable, that there was something broken inside me that made me unwanted. When Ryan Mitchell walked into the coffee shop where I worked during college and said he loved me, I thought God had finally heard my prayers. Here was this handsome, charming man from a wealthy family, telling me I was special, that I mattered, that he wanted to build a life with me. I believed him completely. I gave him everything I had. But tonight, everything I'd believed, everything I'd hoped for, everything I'd built my life around was about to shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. Ryan handed me the divorce papers in front of everyone assembled. The room fell silent as I scanned the first page with blurring vision. His mother stepped forward, her Chanel perfume overwhelming, her expression triumphant. She was holding a champagne flute, and before I could process what was happening, she threw the contents directly in my face. The cold liquid soaked through my sweater, ran down my neck, dripped onto the papers I was still holding. The crystal glass shattered against the marble floor near my feet, sending shards skittering across the polished surface. The crowd gasped, then fell into an electric silence. "That's for wasting 3 years of my son's life," Patricia said, her voice carrying clearly through the stunned quiet. "You thought you could trap him forever? Please, your time has run out." I stood there dripping, shaking, unable to speak or move or think. Someone behind me laughed nervously. Then another person joined in. Soon there were whispers, phones being pulled from pockets, cameras clicking. I was the evening's entertainment, the spectacle, the cautionary tale about marrying above your station. 2 security guards appeared at my elbows as if summoned. "This way, ma'am," one said, not unkindly but firmly. They walked me toward the doors while I heard more whispers, more laughter, Amanda's voice rising above the rest saying, "Oh my God, this is absolutely insane. Did you see her face?" The cold outside hit me like a physical wall. Snow was falling harder now, covering everything in white, beautiful, pristine, untouched, until you Ave nowhere to go, and then it's just cold and endless and suffocating. I stumbled to my car, climbed inside, and sat in the darkness. My whole body was numb, and not from the temperature. I couldn't feel my hands, couldn't feel my heart beating, couldn't feel anything except a vast emptiness where my life used to be. That's when I noticed my left hand. My wedding ring was gone. It had slipped off somewhere, lost in the snow or shattered glass or the chaos of my humiliation. 3 years of marriage, and I couldn't even tell you where the symbol of it disappeared to. I didn't go back to look for it. I just sat there staring at my bare finger, at the champagne stains darkening my sweater, at nothing and everything. My phone screen illuminated the dark interior of my car. One notification blinked at me, missed call from unknown number, and suddenly I remembered, the woman from this morning, the call I'd barely processed in my rush to get through another day. What she'd said couldn't possibly be real. It didn't make any kind of logical sense. But sitting in that frozen car with absolutely nowhere to sleep and exactly $247 in my bank account, I realized I didn't have anything left to lose. With shaking fingers, I pressed call back. One ring, then her voice urgent and concerned. Miss Davies, are you all right? No, my voice cracked, broke completely. I'm not all right. Where are you right now? I don't know exactly, somewhere near Greenwich, but I can't stay here. I'm coming to get you right now, don't move. Wait, I whispered into the phone. Who are you? What do you want from me? There was a pause, heavy with meaning, then she spoke words that made no sense. I'm the person your father sent to find you. My heart stopped. I don't have a father. Elizabeth, you need to know something before I get there. The people who just threw you out into the snow, they have absolutely no idea who you really are. None of them do. I don't understand what you're talking about. 20 minutes, stay exactly where you are, will explain everything. She ended the call before I could respond. I sat there in the dark, shaking from cold and shock and confusion, and for the first time in my entire life, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, God hadn't completely forgotten about me after all. 20 minutes felt like an eternity. I watched the snow accumulate on my windshield, watched the lights from the Mitchell estate glow warm and inviting in the distance, watched my breath fog the windows. Then headlights appeared, moving slowly down the street. A black Mercedes sedan pulled up beside my car, silent and sleek. A woman emerged from the driver's side. She wore a sharp gray wool coat that probably cost more than my car, and her eyes were kind but serious as she approached my window. I rolled it down. Elizabeth Davies, she asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm an attorney. There's a diner about 2 miles up the road. Can you follow me there? We need to talk somewhere warm, somewhere private. I nodded again, started my car with numb fingers, and followed her tail lights through the snowy streets. The diner was one of those classic 24-hour places, chrome and red vinyl, mostly empty at this late hour except for one tired-looking waitress wiping down tables. Margaret slid into a booth near the back, and I sat across from her. An older man joined us, settling beside Margaret with a manila folder in his weathered hands. He had gray hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the look of someone who'd seen too much of life's harsh realities. This is Harold Brennan, Margaret said softly. He's the private investigator who found you. Harold placed the thick folder on the table between us. I stared at it like it might explode. I know this doesn't make any sense right now, Margaret continued. I know you're hurting and confused and probably wondering if this is some kind of elaborate scam, but I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Can you do that? I managed a small nod. My hands were still shaking. Margaret opened the folder slowly, deliberately. The first thing I saw was a photograph, slightly faded but still clear. A young woman with auburn hair and gray-green eyes smiled at the camera, holding a newborn baby wrapped in a hospital blanket covered with tiny yellow ducks. The baby's face was scrunched and red, brand new to the world. I couldn't breathe. The woman in the photograph looked exactly like me. The same eyes, the same nose, the same slight dimple in her left cheek. That's your mother, Margaret said quietly, carefully. Her name was Sarah Davies, Sarah Catherine Davies. That baby she's holding is you. This photo was taken at Burlington General Hospital 27 years ago, the day you were born. I stared at the photo, at this woman whose eyes were my eyes, whose smile was my smile. My mother, I whispered. Your mother died when you were 3 years old, Margaret continued. Car accident on Route 89 during a snowstorm, but before that tragedy, something else happened. Something she never had the chance to tell you about. Harold leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Your father is a man named Anthony Ross. He's the founder and CEO of Ross Biomedical Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the northeastern United States. His personal net worth is approximately $4.7 billion. I started laughing. It wasn't joyful laughter. It was the kind of laughter that comes when reality becomes so absurd that your brain can't process it any other way. This is a scam, I said, shaking my head. I don't know what you want, but I don't have any money. I have $247 to my name. You're wasting your time. We don't want your money, Elizabeth, Margaret said firmly. Your father wants to give you his money. He wants to give you everything he has. She pulled out more documents from the folder. DNA test results with my name on them, birth certificates I'd never seen before, legal documents with 2 names side by side, Elizabeth Catherine Davies and Anthony Michael Ross, father and daughter. Your mother fled with you when you were just a newborn, Harold explained. There was a custody dispute. She was terrified of Anthony's wealth, terrified of his world, convinced she wasn't good enough for him or that kind of life. So she took you and disappeared, changed her name, kept you hidden, moved from town to town. Your father has been searching for you for 27 years. He spent millions on private investigators, filed missing persons reports, never gave up hope. Why now? My voice was barely audible. If he's my father, if he's been looking all this time, why did you find me now? Margaret's expression softened with genuine sadness. Because he's dying, Elizabeth. He has ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. The doctors gave him 6 to 18 months to live. That was 4 months ago. He's been looking for you his entire adult life and he finally found you. But now he's running out of time. I looked at the photograph again, at my mother holding me, at the joy in her eyes. If he's really my father, I said slowly, why didn't he find me sooner? 27 years is a long time. He tried everything, Harold said, but your mother was incredibly smart and incredibly determined to stay hidden. She used false names, paid in cash, stayed off any kind of digital record. When she died and you went into state foster care, you were registered under her assumed identity. The trail went completely cold. We only found you because we got access to sealed court records from Vermont Family Services. It took us 3 years of searching through those records to make the connection. Margaret reached across the table and touched my hand gently. Your father is a good man, Elizabeth, a genuinely good man, and he needs you to know something before he dies, something he's wanted to tell you since the day you were born. What? I could barely form the words. That you were never unwanted, that every single day you were gone, he was looking for you, that you matter, that you've always mattered. Tears rolled down my face, hot against my frozen cheeks. I couldn't stop them, couldn't control them. 27 years of believing I was fundamentally unwanted, and this stranger was telling me someone had been searching for me my entire life. Will you come meet him? Margaret asked softly. He's at his estate right now waiting. He's been waiting to meet you for almost 3 decades. I looked at the folder, at my mother's face, at the DNA results, at proof of a life I never knew existed. A life where I wasn't alone, where I wasn't unwanted, where I had a father who'd never stopped looking for me. Yes, I whispered, yes, I'll meet him. Margaret stood immediately, then let's go, he's been waiting long enough. We walked out into the snow, got into her warm car that smelled like leather and subtle perfume, and as we drove north through small Connecticut towns decorated with Christmas lights, past houses glowing with warmth and family, I realized something profound. The people who'd thrown me away tonight, who'd humiliated me and laughed at me and made me feel worthless, they had absolutely no idea what they'd just lost. But they were about to find out. The drive felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's dream. We left the main roads behind, turned onto increasingly private lanes lined with bare trees and high stone walls. Finally, we approached ornate iron gates with a brass plaque, Ross Estate. The gates opened silently and we drove up a long, winding driveway. The house that appeared wasn't what I expected, not a cold marble mansion designed to intimidate. Instead, it was built of warm stone and dark wood with large windows glowing. With golden light, smoke curled from a chimney, it looked like a home, not a statement. Margaret parked near the front entrance. He's been waiting for this moment since the day your mother took you, she said softly. Try to remember that whatever happens in there, you're not alone anymore. Inside, the house smelled like cedar and wood smoke and old books. A fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated simply with white lights and handmade ornaments. And there, beside the fireplace, sitting in a wheelchair with a blanket across his lap, was a man with my eyes. Those same gray-green eyes I'd seen in mirrors my whole life, the eyes I'd seen in that photograph of my mother. Anthony Ross had those eyes, and the moment he saw me, tears began streaming down his weathered face. Elizabeth, his voice broke on my name. Oh my God, you look exactly like her, exactly like your mother. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to process what I was seeing. This man in a wheelchair, clearly ill, clearly weakening, was crying because of me, because he'd finally found me. I thought I'd never find you, he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. I thought I'd lost you forever, I thought I'd die without ever seeing your face. Something inside me shattered completely, not in a breaking way, but in a way that let light flood into places that had been dark my entire life. I crossed the room and fell to my knees beside his wheelchair. He reached out with trembling hands and touched my face, traced the line of my cheek, looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. I'm sorry, he said, tears falling freely. I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner. I never stopped searching, not for one single day, never. I didn't know you existed, I sobbed. I thought no one wanted me, I thought I was alone. You've always had me, he said fiercely. From the moment you were born, you've always had me, I just couldn't find you. We stayed like that, both of us crying, both of us holding each other like we might disappear if we let go. Finally, Margaret cleared her throat gently. Anthony, there's a lot we need to tell her, a lot she needs to understand. He nodded, reluctantly releasing me. I pulled a chair close to his wheelchair and Margaret sat across from us with her ever-present folder. Elizabeth, Anthony said, his voice stronger now, you're my only child, which means you're my only heir. Everything I've built, everything I own, it all belongs to you now. My head spun, I don't understand. My company is worth billions, he continued. And there are people who have been waiting for me to die so they can take control of it. People who have been stealing from me, planning to execute a hostile takeover the moment I'm gone. They think I have no children, no heirs. They think the company will be vulnerable. Margaret opened her folder. My business partner, David Webb, Anthony said, his jaw tightening. He's been embezzling from me for years, millions of dollars hidden in shell companies and false contracts. If I die without an heir, he gets controlling interest in Ross Biomedical. He's been counting on it. She spread documents across the coffee table, bank statements, emails, wire transfers, falsified records. Over $12 million, Margaret said. We've been building a case against him for months. But if we reveal you now, Anthony continued, looking at me intently, he'll come after you. Challenge your legitimacy, tie everything up in courts for years, and I don't have years, I barely have months. How long? I asked, my voice small. He met my eyes, 6 months, maybe less if things progress quickly. I just found him, this father I never knew existed, and I was already losing him, so what do we do? Anthony leaned forward as much as his weakened body would allow. We take back what's yours, but we do it intelligently, strategically. We build an airtight case, and when we're ready, when everything is in place, we destroy everyone who tried to hurt us. He looked at me with fierce determination. The people who threw you out tonight, the people who humiliated you, tell me their names. The Mitchells, I said quietly, Ryan Mitchell, his parents Patricia and Charles. Margaret was already taking notes. Then we start with them, Anthony said, because there's something you need to know about what your husband did during your marriage. My blood ran cold. What did he do? Margaret pulled out more documents. During your marriage, Ryan forged your signature 17 times. He took out loans, opened credit cards, created debt totaling $67,000 all in your name. The divorce papers you signed tonight, they were structured to make you responsible for every penny of that debt while he walks away clean. The room tilted. He planned this. For over a year, Margaret confirmed, his family knew. They help de-orchestrate it. They destroyed your credit, then threw you away with all the debt. Anthony's jaw clenched with barely controlled anger. They used you, they hurt you deliberately, and they thought you'd never be able to fight back. I looked at this dying man who'd searched for me for 27 years. What do I do? He smiled, and it was fierce and proud. You transform, you learn my business inside and out, you become someone they'll never recognize. He paused, and then we make them wish they'd never met you. I want them to feel what I felt tonight, I said quietly. That's my daughter, his eyes gleamed. But we do this right, it'll take months. Training, education, creating a new identity, positioning yourself in their world so they never see you coming. Anthony reached for an envelope beside his wheelchair, old, worn, my mother's handwriting on the front. There's something else, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Your mother wrote this letter 3 weeks before she died. We found it in a safety deposit box along with some of her personal effects. My hands shook as I took it. What does it say? It's addressed to you, he said. To my daughter, if she ever finds this, I think you should read it. You need to know why she ran, why I couldn't find you, why she loved you even when she was too afraid to stay. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. The paper inside was old, slightly yellowed, covered in my mother's flowing handwriting, and the first line stopped my heart completely. My dearest Elizabeth, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I need you to know the truth I was too afraid to tell anyone while I was alive. My mother's handwriting shook on the page, like her hand had trembled while writing it. Your father, Anthony Ross, is a good man, the best man I ever knew. I want you to understand that clearly. I didn't run because he hurt me. I didn't run because he was cruel or dangerous or anything like that. I ran because I was terrified of his world, terrified of not being enough, terrified of dragging both of you down with my fear and inadequacy. Tears blurred the words, but I kept reading. After you were born, I looked at you, this perfect tiny human, and then I looked at him, this brilliant man building an empire, changing the world, and I felt so impossibly small. I convinced myself that you'd both be better off without me, that my brokenness would infect your lives, that I would ruin everything beautiful about both of you. So I took you and I ran, and I've regretted it every single day since. Every morning I wake up knowing I stole you from a father who would have loved you perfectly. Every night I go to sleep knowing I'm not enough for you, but too selfish to give you back to him. If you ever find this letter, know that I loved you more than I loved my own fears, but not enough to be brave. I'm sorry, baby girl, I'm so deeply sorry. Tell your father I never stopped loving him, I just couldn't love myself enough to stay. I looked up at Anthony through tears. He was crying too, silently, his face etched with decades of pain. She didn't run from you, I whispered. She ran from herself. I know, his voice broke completely. And I lost 30 years with you because of it, because I couldn't make her believe she was enough, because I couldn't save her from her own fears. We sat there in the quiet, both of us grieving what could have been, what should have been, what was stolen by fear and tragedy and terrible timing. I forgive her, I said finally. I understand her. I've felt exactly what she felt my entire life, not enough, never enough. Anthony gripped my hand with what little strength he had. You are enough, Elizabeth. You've always been enough, and I'm going to spend whatever time I have left proving that to you. That night marked the beginning of my transformation. I moved into the estate, into a beautiful room with windows overlooking gardens I'd explore when spring came, though I knew Anthony wouldn't see another spring. The next 2 weeks were intensive. Margaret arrived every morning with tutors, business coaches, corporate lawyers. I learned how Ross Biomedical worked, studied pharmaceutical development, memorized financial reports, absorbed everything about my father's company. Anthony insisted on helping teach me even though it exhausted him. He'd sit in his wheelchair while Margaret projected spreadsheets and contracts, interjecting explanations, sharing stories about building the business, making sure I understood not just the mechanics but the heart of what he'd created. This company saves lives, he told me one evening, his speech slowing as fatigue set in. We develop treatments for rare diseases that Big Pharma ignores because they're not profitable enough. That's our mission, that's what you'll be protecting. I learned quickly, business strategy made sense to me in a way I never expected. Numbers told stories if you knew how to read them. By the end of week 2, I could analyze a quarterly report and spot irregularities, understand market trends, discuss pharmaceutical patents with actual comprehension. But we also worked on my physical transformation. A stylist changed my hair from mousy brown to rich auburn with subtle highlights. Contact lenses replaced my glasses. A personal shopper filled my closet with designer clothes that actually fit my body instead of hanging loose like I was trying to disappear inside them. But the real change was deeper than cosmetics. Margaret brought in a coach who taught me to walk differently, head up, shoulders back, taking up space instead of apologizing for existing. I practiced speaking with confidence, making eye contact, commanding attention instead of shrinking from it. You're becoming who you were always meant to be, Anthony said one morning, watching me review acquisition proposals. Not someone different, just someone who finally believes in herself. I'm doing this for you, I told him. No, he squeezed my hand weakly. You're doing this for you, for every version of yourself that was told she wasn't enough. I'm just grateful I get to witness it. By the end of the first month, I looked nothing like the girl who'd signed those divorce papers. I looked like power, like confidence, like someone who belonged in boardrooms and executive offices. Margaret created my new identity meticulously. Elise Ross, corporate consultant specializing in pharmaceutical mergers and acquisitions. 10 years of experience in London working with European biotech firms. References, credentials, a whole fabricated history that would withstand scrutiny. You're ready, Margaret announced one morning in early February. But I wasn't sure I believed her. That night I sat with Anthony by the fire. He could barely hold his head up now, couldn't speak clearly for more than a few minutes before exhaustion overtook him. Dad, I said, the words still feeling miraculous on my tongue. What if I fail? What if I can't do this? He looked at me with those gray-green eyes we shared. God didn't bring you here to fail, he whispered with effort. He brought you here to rise. He's been preparing you for this your entire life. Every hardship, every rejection, every moment you felt worthless, those were lessons, not definitions. I'm scared. Good, he managed a smile. Fear means you're about to do something that matters, but remember something for me. What? His next words took several attempts. Don't become like them. When you have the power to destroy them and you will have that power, don't let revenge make you cruel. Stay kind, stay good, even when you're taking everything from them. I nodded through tears, I promise. That's my girl. The following week, Margaret made the first move. She sent a carefully crafted proposal to Mitchell Investment Group, currently drowning in debt they'd hidden from public view. The proposal came from Elise Ross, corporate restructuring specialist with an impressive track record. Consultation fee, $25,000 for initial assessment. Charles Mitchell accepted within 3 hours. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 10:00 a.m. Mitchell Investment Group offices in Greenwich, the same town where they'd thrown me out 2 months earlier. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I stood in front of my closet, Margaret beside me, choosing the perfect outfit. We settled on a charcoal gray Valentino suit with a silk blouse the color of storm clouds. Hair pulled back in a sleek low bun, minimal jewelry, makeup flawless but understated. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked powerful, untouchable, nothing like the broken girl who'd cried in her car while snow fell around her. That's exactly the point, Margaret said, reading my thoughts. They'll never see you coming. Tuesday morning arrived cold and clear. I drove to Greenwich in a rented BMW, black and pristine, parked in the executive lot where I'd never been allowed to park during my marriage, walked through the doors of Mitchell Investment Group like I owned the building. The receptionist smiled professionally. Miss Ross, thank you for coming. They're waiting for you in the main conference room. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water? No, thank you, I said smoothly. I'm fine. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it, but my hands were perfectly steady. I walked down that familiar hallway, past offices I'd visited during my marriage, past photographs of Mitchell family success through the generations. I pushed open the conference room door and there they were. Charles Mitchell sat at the head of the table, looking older than I remembered, stress evident in the new lines around his eyes. Patricia sat beside him, impeccably dressed as always, but I noticed her Cartier watch was missing, sold probably. Amanda, Ryan's sister, was there too, checking her pH. One with board entitlement. And Ryan sat across from the empty chair clearly meant for me, and the moment I walked in, his eyes locked on mine. They all stood polite and desperate and grateful. Charles extended his hand first. Miss Ross, thank you so much for coming on such short notice. Your reputation in the industry is outstanding. We're fortunate you had availability. I shook his hand firmly, met his eyes without flinching. He had no idea who I was, not the slightest flicker of recognition. Thank you for the opportunity, I said, my voice steady and professional. Your situation presented an interesting challenge. I sat in the empty chair, crossed my legs, opened my leather briefcase with deliberate calm. Margaret had prepared everything perfectly. I pulled out their financial records, documents that revealed just how desperate their situation had become. Let's talk about your debt, I said simply. Patricia leaned forward immediately. We're in a difficult position, as I'm sure you can see from the preliminary documents we sent. We need someone with your expertise and discretion. I understand completely. I flipped through pages, letting them sweat. I've reviewed your books extensively. The situation is actually worse than your initial disclosure suggested. Charles's face went pale. How much worse? Significantly worse. I met his eyes. But it's not unfixable. With the right strategy and immediate action, we can restructure your debts and potentially save the firm. They all relaxed visibly, relief flooding their faces. Except Ryan. Ryan kept staring at me with intense focus, his brow furrowed like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Have we met before? He asked suddenly. Every nerve in my body lit up, but I kept my expression neutral. I don't believe so. Why do you ask? You seem familiar somehow, your eyes maybe, or your voice. I smiled coolly, professionally. I have one of those faces, people often think they recognize me. Maybe, but he didn't look convinced. The meeting continued for 90 minutes. I asked pointed questions, took detailed notes, gave them just enough hope to keep them desperate for my help. All the while, Ryan watched me with that puzzled expression. As we wrapped up, Patricia practically begged me to take them on as clients. We can pay your fee immediately, Miss Ross, whatever you need. We're committed to saving this firm. It's been in our family for 3 generations. I'll review everything in detail and send you my proposal by end of week, I said, standing and gathering my materials. If we proceed, I'll need complete transparency and immediate implementation of my recommendations. No exceptions. Of course, Charles said quickly, whatever you need. I shook hands with each of them again. When I got to Ryan, he held my hand a moment too long. I know I've seen you before, he said quietly. Perhaps at an industry conference, I suggested smoothly. I've spoken at several in the past few years. Maybe, but his eyes said he didn't believe that. I walked out of that conference room, down the hallway, out the doors, and made it to my car before my hands started shaking. I sat there for 10 minutes, breathing carefully, processing what had just happened. They didn't know. Patricia had thrown champagne in my face 2 months ago, and she'd smiled at me today like I was her salvation. Charles had watched security drag me out, and he'd shaken my hand with genuine gratitude. But Ryan was suspicious, and that could ruin everything. My phone rang. Margaret. How did it go? She asked immediately. They didn't recognize me, except Ryan. He keeps saying I look familiar. Do you want to pull out? I thought about Anthony at home, getting weaker every day. I thought about that photograph of my mother holding me as a newborn. I thought about every time Patricia had called me charity case, every time Charles had implied I was beneath them, every time Ryan had promised to love me while secretly destroying my credit. No, I said firmly. We continue, but we need to move faster. Ryan's smart enough to figure this out if given enough time. Understood, I'll adjust the timeline. Over the next 3 months, I became a regular presence at Mitchell Investment Group. Twice weekly meetings to review their finances, implement restructuring strategies, negotiate with creditors. I kept them afloat just enough to keep them dependent on me, desperate for my continued help. Charles began treating me like a trusted advisor, calling me with questions, seeking my opinion on decisions. Patricia invited me to family dinners, trying to network to keep me engaged with their firm. I declined politely, maintaining professional boundaries. But Ryan continued watching me with increasing suspicion. One afternoon in late April, he cornered me after a meeting, just the two of us in the conference room. I knew.